Hi, I'm so happy you've joined me for another video looking at reading a book with me, so let's get to it. I'm so excited to be doing the tale of Peter Rabbit with you today and for us to be reading this story together. It's written and illustrated by Beatrix Potter, and Beatrix Potter was an incredible woman. She was born in 1866. She was a natural scientist, environmentalist, preservationist, farmer, and she was ahead of her time because she lived in the Victorian society, but she made her own decisions, she handled her own business affairs, and she was an unmarried woman. So that was really unusual at the time. And she's written loads of different stories, and you might see some on the TV screen, like they've been turned into movies. And I hope you enjoy. So let's read together. So before we even start, we can see some of her amazing drawings. And what animals can you see on the page? Well, there are two mice at the top. We have a squirrel in the middle on the left-hand side. And opposite the squirrel, do you know what owl? Which hoots, hoots. Yes, the owl. And then we have the cat, and we have, of course, little Peter Rabbit, who we're going to be reading about today. Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank underneath the root of a very big fir tree. And you can see 4 little rabbits in the picture. Now, my dears, said old Mrs. Rabbit one morning, you may go into the fields or down the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. And you can see Mrs. Rabbit with her blue dress on and a white apron, and she's handing little baskets to her 3 children with the red coats on. And there's Peter, who's not looking at his mum, he's looking in the opposite direction with his blue coat on. And you can see on his blue coat there are 1, 2, 3, 4 white buttons. So his coat's not even done up. So I hope it's not too cold. Your father had an accident there. He was put in a pie by Mrs. McGregor. Oh dear. And Mrs. McGregor's holding a pie. There seems to be a dog, a little baby in the background, and you can see the hands of Mr. McGregor, who's holding his knife and fork ready to eat. Now run along and don't get into mischief. I am going out. And the word mischief just means trouble. So don't get into any trouble, she's telling her children. Then old Mrs. Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella and went through the wood to the baker's. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 currant buns. So currants are, another word for currants is raisins. And raisins are dried fruit. But do you know which fruit is dried to make raisins or currants? It is grapes. So raisins are dried grapes. Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather blackberries. And there you can see them just gathering their fruit, blackberries. Have you got a favourite fruit? So I might have told you in a previous video of mine that I really love raspberries, but also I love mango and watermelon as well. So what's your favourite fruit? But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. So to squeeze under the gate, it means that it was a tight fit and he really had to struggle to get through. First, he ate some lettuces and some French beans, and then he ate some radishes. And can you see the bird that's sitting next to Peter with its orange or reddy brown colour? And do you know what kind of bird that is? It's a little robin, so that's a robin. And then, feeling rather sick, he went to look for some parsley. But round the end of a cucumber frame, whom should he meet but Mr. McGregor? Okay, you can see Mr. McGregor. If we were to describe him, we would say that he has a big white beard as well. So just the hair from your chin is a white beard, and he's wearing glasses, and he's looking straight at Peter. Oh dear, he better get out of there. Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees, planting out young cabbages, but he jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake and calling out, "Stop, thief!" So there you can see Mr. McGregor has a rake in his hand, and a rake you use to clear up leaves or in the garden, a lot of time in autumn, just to clear up the path. And waving, well, you might have seen this is a wave, like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And it's when you move your hand from side to side. But if you're waving something around, it means that you're moving it around. And in this case, Mr. McGregor is waving his rake around in anger and frustration. Peter was most dreadfully frightened. He rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten the way back to the gate. He lost one of his shoes among the cabbages. And to be frightened is to be very, very, very scared. So Peter was incredibly scared, and he had forgotten the way back. So he was lost in the garden. And the other shoe amongst the potatoes. After losing them, he ran on 4 legs and went faster, so that I think he might have got away altogether if he had not unfortunately run into a gooseberry net and got caught by the large buttons on his jacket. It was a blue jacket with brass buttons, quite new. Peter gave himself up for lost and shed big tears, but his sobs were overheard by some friendly sparrows, who flew to him in great excitement and implored him to exert himself. So we've got a few tricky words here. So the sobs, to sob is to cry. And they implored him. So they pleaded with him. They begged him to implore. And to exert himself, well, to exert is to put in work, to put in energy, to put in effort. And how many sparrows are imploring to him to get out, to save himself, to free himself? Yes, there's 1, 2, 3 sparrows. Mr. McGregor came up with a sieve, which he intended to pop upon the top of Peter, but Peter wriggled out just in time, leaving his jacket behind him. So a sieve is something that we use in cooking, and we might put vegetables in, and then to wash them, we put the water in the sieve, but there are lots of little holes, so it runs out. And I'm happy that Peter was able to wriggle out. Wriggling out is that movement where you're moving your body from one side to another, and that's a wriggle as well. Can you wriggle with me? And rushed into the tool shed and jumped into a can. It would have been a beautiful thing to hide in if it had not had so much water in it. And this is a watering can, and we use it to water the plants or flowers so that we know that they're hydrated and happy. Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed, perhaps hidden underneath a flower pot. He began to turn them over carefully, looking under each. Presently, Peter sneezed. Ka-chew! Mr. McGregor was after him in no time. And presently is like now. So it's another way to say now, in this moment. And do you know any good ways to stop yourself from sneezing? Like holding your nose, doing deep gulps in, like when you need to sneeze, you just need to sneeze. And tried to put his foot upon Peter, who jumped out of a window, upsetting 3 plants. The window was too small for Mr. McGregor, and he was tired of running after Peter. He went back to his work. So luckily, Peter got away. And you see the word foot, the plural of foot is feet as well. So you've got 1 foot and 2 feet. Peter sat down to rest. He was out of breath and trembling with fright, and he had not the least idea which way to go. Also, he was very damp with sitting in that can. So poor Peter, and he was trembling, he was shivering because he was scared, and he was damp because of the water. After a time, he began to wander about, going lippity-lippity, not very fast, and looking all around. He found a door in a wall, but it was locked, and there was no room for a fat little rabbit to squeeze underneath. An old mouse was running in and out of the stone doorstep, carrying peas and beans to her family in the wood. Peter asked her the way to the gate, but she had such a large peanut mouth that she could not answer. She only shook her head at him. Peter began to cry. Then he tried to find his way straight across the garden, but he became more and more puzzled. Presently he came to a pond where Mr. McGregor filled his water cans. A white cat was staring at some goldfish. She sat very, very still, but now and then the tip of her tail twitched as if it were alive. Peter thought it best to go away without speaking to her. He had heard about cats from his cousin, little Benjamin Bunny. And the word puzzled means confused, like, oh, puzzled. And you might see that puzzle because of jigsaw puzzles. So it's where you put two jigsaws together and try and create a whole picture. And my favourite kind of puzzle is a chess puzzle as well. So I try and work out what the best move is. And you can see that white cat looking at how many goldfish do you see? Well, yes, so you can see the cat looking at 3 goldfish as well. And very smart of Peter to not talk to the cat, because bunnies and cats do not always get along. He went back towards the tool shed, but suddenly, quite close to him, he heard the noise of a hoe. Scritch, scratch, scratch, scritch. Peter scuttered underneath the bushes. But presently, as nothing happened, he came out and climbed upon a wheelbarrow and peeped over. The first thing he saw was Mr. McGregor hoeing onions. His back was turned towards Peter, and beyond him was the gate. Okay, so a wheelbarrow is the thing that Peter's on right now, and it's to transport one thing from one place to another, especially in the garden. And do you know how many wheels a wheelbarrow has? It has 3 wheels, 1 at the front and 2 at the back, so you can guide and steer and move items around. And you can see he peeped over, which means that he looked carefully, so that's to peep. Peter got down very quietly off the wheelbarrow and started running as fast as he could go along a straight walk behind some blackcurrant bushes. Mr. McGregor caught sight of him at the corner, but Peter did not care. He slipped underneath the gate and was safe at last in the woods outside the garden. Deep sigh of relief from all of us that Peter is safe. Mr. McGregor hung up the little jacket and the shoes for a scarecrow to frighten the blackbirds. And you can see all of Peter's clothes are being used as a scarecrow, and it's to stop the birds from eating like the fruit and the vegetable, the items in the garden, and that's why people make scarecrows and farmers have scarecrows. Peter never stopped running or looked behind him till he got home to the big fir tree. And in the background you can see his brothers and sisters as well, Flopsy, Mopsy and Cottontail. He was so tired that he flopped down upon the nice soft sand on the floor of the rabbit hole and shut his eyes. His mother was busy cooking. She wondered what he had done with his clothes. It was the second little jacket and pair of shoes that Peter had lost in a fortnight. And a fortnight is every 2 weeks. So a fortnight is a 2-week period, every 2 weeks. I am sorry to say that Peter was not very well during the evening. His mother put him to bed and made some chamomile tea, and she gave a dose of it to Peter, 1 tablespoonful to be taken at bedtime. But Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail had bread and milk and blackberries for supper. The end. I hope that you enjoyed the book, and I think it's such a lesson to perhaps listen to our mothers because they do know best. But you can see that Beatrix Potter has a range of other books and different animals and different characters. So hopefully we'll be able to read another one as well in the future together. But you can see there's the tale of Squirrel Nutter. We have mice. We have toads. There's so many animals that we can really get stuck into, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Goodbye, and hope to see you in the next story, and make sure to subscribe so that you're kept abreast of all the new information and updates and whenever I upload something new. Bye.